They say if you enter Hoia Baciu Forest, you don't come back the same, not because you vanish, but because something inside you changes. Some call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Others, they refuse to call it anything at all, afraid that saying its name might make it hear you. And maybe it does, because in Hoia Baciu the forest listens, and sometimes it whispers back, Transylvania. The name alone already drips with gothic shadows and vampire tales, castles, wolves, and legends of the undead. But this story, it's not about Dracula. It's about a place far older, far stranger, and infinitely more real. Just a few kilometers west of Cluj-Napoca, Romania, lies a dense patch of woodlands mall, quiet, unassuming from a distance, only about 3 square kilometers. A simple forest, but step inside, and it feels like stepping into another world. Locals have whispered about it for generations, about the lights that hover above the trees, the screams that echo from nowhere, the shadows that move against the wind. And then there's the smell, earthy, electric scent in the air, as if the forest itself is charged, watching, waiting. The first time someone disappeared here, it wasn't taken seriously. People thought, it's just the woods. But the disappearances didn't stop. The earliest known story goes back to the 1960s. A shepherd led his flock, about 200 sheep, into the forest. He was familiar with the land, had done this countless times before, but that day, he never returned. Not him, not the sheep, not a single trace. For days, the villagers searched. They followed the paths, the slopes, the sound of water. But the forest was silent, empty. Even the dogs refused to enter beyond a certain point, tails down, whining, backing away. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. From that moment on, people began to call it cursed. Some believed it was a portal, a rip in space where time and reality fold in on themselves. Others thought it was the work of restless spirits, souls caught between worlds. And that's where the name came from, Hoia Baciu, after the shepherd himself. Fast forward a few years, 1968, a military technician named Emil Barnia decides to go for a picnic in the forest with his girlfriend and 2 friends. It was a sunny afternoon, calm, quiet, normal, until something strange appeared above the trees, a disc-shaped object, metallic, glowing faintly against the clouds. Barnia had a camera. He snapped 4 photos before it vanished behind the tree line. Those images became some of the most famous UFO photographs in history, analyzed by experts, debated by skeptics, and published in newspapers around the world. But Barnia was not a believer. Not before that day. When he returned home, his life began to crumble. He lost his job. He was accused of fabricating the story. And his friends, they all reported the same thing. Strange phone calls, missing time, the feeling of being watched, even in their own homes. Something from that forest followed them back. People who spent time inside Hoia Baciu describe the same thing, a sensation that can't be explained. It starts with a tingling on your skin, a low hum in your ears. Your head feels heavy, like the air itself is thicker, denser. Then you start feeling the anxiety, the panic, the dread. It's not fear of the dark. It's something deeper, like being observed by 1,000 unseen eyes. Some researchers call it electromagnetic sensitivity. Others say it's mass hysteria. But those who've been there say it's not just in your head. The forest knows when you enter. Visitors report losing track of time. Watches stop working. Cameras die. Compasses spin wildly. And sometimes, people disappear for hours only to reappear confused, trembling, with no memory of where they've been. One woman vanished for 5 years. When she reappeared, she wore the same clothes she had on the day she disappeared, clean, intact, untouched by time. She had no idea she'd been gone longer than a few minutes. This isn't just a place of stories, it's a place of people. Local families still warn their children not to go near the forest after dark. There are old women who still leave bread and salt at the forest's edge offerings. For the spirits said to wander inside, you can feel their fear. It's not superstition, it's memory. Generations who've seen loved ones walk into the trees and never return. And yet, curiosity always wins. Tourists come, statists come, ghost hunters, thrill seekers, skeptics all, trying to explain what this place really is. But every time, they leave with more questions than answers. Why does nothing grow in the clearing of the circle, the strange barren patch at the forest's center where trees refuse to sprout? Why do electronic devices malfunction there? And why do so many people report seeing faces, human faces, forming in the mist? Maybe the forest isn't evil. Maybe it's just alive. What if it's not punishing people, but reflecting them, their fears, their obsessions, their guilt? Some say the spirits inside Hoia Baciu are the ones who died unjustly, victims of ancient rituals or violence long forgotten. Others believe the forest feeds off emotion itself, that it collects fear, the way a storm collects static before lightning strikes. But what if the real horror isn't the forest? What if it's what we bring into it? Our own darkness magnified and mirrored until we can't tell where we end and the forest begins. Key. In the late 1990s, a group of scientists entered Hoia Baciu with electromagnetic sensors and recording devices. They wanted data-hard proof. What they found was worse than proof. Every sensor, every recorder, stopped working at the exact same spot, the barren clearing. The team reported feeling dizzy, disoriented, nauseous. One scientist claimed he heard a woman whisper in his ear, though no one else was near him. Another collapsed to his knees, screaming that something was inside his head. They left the forest in a panic, and when they listened to the only recorder that survived, all they heard was static and a single faint whisper, "Don't come back." Every forest has its own silence, but the silence in Hoia Baciu feels different. It listens. It's patient, almost intelligent, as if waiting for the exact moment when your mind begins to break. Some describe it as being watched, others as being remembered. And that's the part no one warns you about. You don't just see things in Hoia Baciu, you leave parts of yourself behind. Quinn. When people come back from the forest, they change. Some grow distant, some can't sleep. A few start dreaming in places they've never been. Circular clearings, flickering lights, and whispers that seem to know their name. Doctors call it post-traumatic stress. Locals call it the forest's echo. But those who've heard it know, it's not just in their heads. Fear doesn't always need a monster. Sometimes, all it needs is a reflection. That's what the forest does best. It reflects you, your doubts, your guilt, your memories. One visitor, a documentary filmmaker named Nadia Petrescu, entered the forest in 2014. She brought cameras, sound gear, and a local guide. She was confident, rational, skeptical. Her last recording begins with laughter, chatter, the sound of wind. Then, halfway through the night, her tone changes. You hear her whispering to someone, but her guide's voice isn't there anymore. Who's there? Why are you following me? Then silence. Only her breathing. Then her voice again, trembling. It looks like me. That was her last transmission. When rescue teams found her 2 days later, she was sitting in the clearing unharmed, eyes open, completely still. She said nothing for hours. When she finally spoke, she just whispered, "It showed me what I really am." She quit filmmaking, moved away, never spoke of Hoia Baciu again. In recent years, physicists from Romania and Japan revisited the site with magnetic resonance equipment. Their goal was to measure the forest's electromagnetic field. But something strange happened. Instruments recorded impossible readings. Frequency spikes appeared in geometric patterns, like coded signals. Every 47 seconds, the data repeated itself a pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Some of the team joked that it was the forest's way of saying hello, Kla. But when they analyzed the pattern further, they found that the pulse wasn't random. It matched the rhythm of human REM sleep. The scientists dismissed it as coincidence. But what if it wasn't? What if Hoia Baciu is alive, not as a creature, but as consciousness? What if it dreams when we enter, and we become part of its dream? People call the forest cursed, evil. They call it haunted, evil. But maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe it's not evil, just ancient. A place older than language, older than memory, built to absorb the echoes of what we feel most deeply. Humans have always feared what they can't control, but we forget something important. We created this fear. Every scream, every violent act, every desperate prayer, all of it left behind traces, Hoia Baciu, just collects them, like a memory made of trees. A mirror built from the silence between heartbeats. So maybe the forest isn't punishing us. Maybe it's trying to remind us who we've become. And that is the most terrifying truth of all. There's a saying among the villagers near Cluj, the forest keeps count. They believe every time someone disappears, a new tree grows. Not from the ground, but from the memory of what was lost. Each tree holds a fragment of a person, their last emotion, their final breath. That's why the forest feels alive, because, in a way, it is. And when you walk through it, those memories reach for you. They whisper through the branches, brushing against your mind, searching for recognition. One visitor described it perfectly. I didn't feel alone. I felt surrounded by myself in 1,000 different versions. There's a dirt trail that leads deep into Hoia Baciu, a narrow path locals call Kalia Fara Antorzia, the path of no return. It's not marked on any map. If you follow it, your GPS stops working within minutes. Those who've walked it describe strange distortions. Their watches desynchronize. Shadows move against the light, and sometimes the forest rearranges itself. You walk forward, but somehow end up back where you started. Time folds. Space forgets direction. It's as if the forest itself decides whether you may leave. Maybe that's why so many people go there, despite the fear, despite the warnings. Because deep down, we all want to touch the unknown, to see what hides beneath the layers of logic and light. We say we're searching for truth, but maybe truth isn't what we find. Maybe truth is what finds us. And in Hoia Baciu, the truth wears the shape of your own shadow. If consciousness exists beyond our minds, if places can think, remember, and dream, then perhaps the forest isn't haunted by the dead at all. Perhaps it's haunted by the living, by us. Because every time we look into the dark looks back. If you ever visit Romania and find yourself near Cluj-Napoca, you might feel tempted to see the forest for yourself. Locals will warn you not to go at night. They'll tell you stories about lost hikers, strange lights, and voices that sound like someone you miss. But if you do go, and if you hear your name whispered from the trees, don't answer. Because it's not calling you out of curiosity. It's calling because it remembers you. You came back. Hoia Baciu never forgets. Once you step inside, it learns who you are. It remembers your heartbeat, your scent, the way you breathe. And when you leave, it watches, waiting for the right moment to call you back. After the disappearances, after the UFO photos, after all the stories, scientists couldn't stay away. In the 1970s and 80s, researchers from all over Europe came to Cluj-Napoca to study the mystery forest. They came with sensors, infrared cameras, and radiation detectors, chasing something that shouldn't exist. Some wanted answers, some wanted fame, and a few just wanted to prove they weren't afraid. But fear is exactly what Hoia Baciu understands best. The deeper you go, the heavier the air gets. It's not just humidity, it's pressure, like walking into a memory that doesn't belong to you. Even seasoned soldiers have turned back halfway through, pale and shaking, claiming they heard footsteps following them, matching their every move. In 1970, biologist Alexandru Sift began one of the first official investigations. He believed the forest emitted unusual radiation, a natural phenomenon, not supernatural. He spent years photographing light anomalies, strange shadows, and geometric formations between the trees. But as his research deepened, so did his paranoia. He wrote about invisible beings that watched him while he worked, about a presence that made the air hum like static. In his last notes before his death, he wrote, "There is intelligence here. It hides in frequency, not form." Ka. After he died in 1993, most of his photographs vanished. Thousands of images, gone. His assistant claimed that a government team took them, but no official record was ever found. All that remained were a few surviving photos showing eerie lights floating in the shape of a human silhouette. People often think horror lives outside, in the dark, in monsters, in ghosts. But in Hoia Baciu, horror feels internal. The forest plays with your thoughts, turns fear into confusion, then confusion into madness. Perhaps psychologists who visited reported collective hallucinations, hearing the same whisper at the same time, seeing identical figures among the trees. Some believe it's an energy field, a living echo that projects your own memories back at you. One visitor described walking through the clearing and suddenly hearing her mother's voice calling her name, even though her mother had been dead for years. When she turned toward the sound, she saw a woman in white standing still among the trees. Then, silence. No footprints, no trace. Her audio recorder captured nothing, except the faint sound of breathing. These aren't random ghost tales, they're logged accounts, police reports, university studies, documented testimonies from people who didn't even believe in the supernatural before they went in. A military officer once led a small squad through the forest for training exercises. At 2 in the morning, they reported strange electromagnetic interference. Radios went dead. Compasses spun, and their GPS devices froze. Moments later, the men began turning on each other. Panicked, arguing, one soldier claiming to see something standing behind them. When they left the forest at dawn, one of them was missing. He reappeared 12 hours later, barefoot and silent, with scratches all over his body, but no memory of where he'd been. His first words after being found were, "The forest wanted me to stay." At the heart of Hoia Baciu lies its strangest feature, the clearing, also called Poiana Rotund, or the Dead Circle. No trees grow there. No grass lasts more than a few weeks. The soil is chemically normal. Scientists confirmed that repeatedly, and yet nothing survives. When you stand in the center of the clearing, sound changes. Your voice doesn't echo. Birds go quiet. Even the wind stops. Some say it's a landing site for UFOs. Others think it's a burned-out scar from an ancient ritual, a place where reality itself thinned. A few claim it's a mirror, that when you step inside, the forest shows you what it wants you to see. Researchers who spent the night there described feeling as though someone was standing right behind them, breathing on their necks, even when infrared cameras showed no heat signatures. When asked what it felt like, one said, "Like being inside the heartbeat of something that isn't human." But here's where things twist. What if the forest isn't doing this to people? What if it's responding to them? If human emotion, memory, and trauma leave traces, What happens when a place absorbs that energy for centuries? Witch trials, wars, executions. Transylvania has seen them all. Maybe Hoia Baciu is simply the world's oldest archive of human suffering, a natural recorder of pain. And when someone steps inside, it plays back whatever resonates most. That's why some people see glowing orbs, others see ghosts, and a few see themselves. A mirror doesn't choose what it reflects. It only shows what's already there. One of the most disturbing real accounts came in 2001. A 5-year-old girl vanished while playing near the forest's edge. Police searched for days. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing. 5 years later, she reappeared, in the same spot, unaged, wearing the same clothes. No sign of injury. Doctors confirmed her body hadn't aged a day. She spoke softly, confused, asking why everyone looked so different. When they showed her a calendar, she didn't understand what years meant. When asked where she'd been, she simply said, "The lights took me into the trees. They said I could come back when it was quiet again." No one could explain it. The story appeared briefly in Romanian tabloids before being buried and dismissed as urban legend. But several locals remember it clearly, because they were part of the search team. Imagine living near a place that erases time. Imagine tucking your child in at night and wondering if they'll hear the forest calling in their dreams. That's what life near Hoia Baciu is like. The fear doesn't leave when you step out of the trees. It follows you home, in your reflection, in your sleep, in the silence right before dawn when the world holds its breath. Because the forest doesn't just haunt those who enter it. It remembers them. Some locals even claim that once you set foot inside, you become part of it, a name whispered among the leaves, a story the wind retells to the next visitor. You heard it too, didn't you? The voice is faint, familiar. It sounds like someone you once loved. But when you turn around, no one's there.